Hey, in this video we'll be looking at blueprints and making a simple jumping blueprint. So I'm here in Unreal Engine and I want to set up a blueprint that is an object that jumps. Now this isn't the normal way that we would create a jumping object, but it gives you some experience looking around the engine and playing with this blueprints concept. So this is a new project and I'm just going to click into the content browser, and it starts us off in the third person BP folder. I'm going to go to content just so that I can put my blueprint right here in the base folder. So if I right click in this, it gives me a bunch of options. One of them is to create a blueprint class, and that's what I'm going to do. Blueprint classes can be based on these pre-existing classes. I'm going to choose actor. An actor is kind of the basic unit of objects in your scene. So pretty much everything that you see in your game is an actor. It's sort of the equivalent of a game object in Unity. So I'm going to click on actor, and it creates a blueprint for me and asks me to name it. So I'll call this jumping actor. Alright, let me just double click on that, and it opens up the blueprint editor. So this is a separate window from Unreal, and it lets me see first what the object looks like. Right now it just has this default circle thing that's not actually going to show up. So I need to give it another component. I'm going to just add a cube on here. So go to add component, and there's a cube option, or you can start typing it in cube. Alright, there it is. And so we're in the viewport panel here. There's a construction script panel for setting up different things about your object when the game starts or when this object is created, and there's an event graph that lets you set up reactions that the object has to different events, things that happen in your game. And this is what we want. We want to make this thing jump. So the first thing we need to do is enable input on this object. We need to make sure that it is capable of responding to a key press. So the three events we have so far that they start us off with are begin play. So this is when this actor starts doing its thing, like when it's first created. There's begin overlap, which is when it collides with things. And there's tick, which is like many times a second this thing will happen. So this event will occur. And so you can have kind of continuous effects happen when you respond to the tick event. I'm going to just turn off these comments to declutter this a little bit. Alright, so on this begin play event, I want to drag off of this triangle in order to create another node and connect them at the same time. So it brings me up a menu where it gives me a bunch of suggestions for what kind of nodes I could place here. And it's also context sensitive, so it kind of knows what's possible from this event, so it'll give you those options and let you search within those. And the search is really good, so if you start typing in here, you'll usually find what you want. So what I want is to enable input. I can find that node, click on it, and you'll see that it instantly enables both of these nodes. They turn brighter, and now they're connected. So this connection can be thought of as the stream of instruction. We start at this event, and it goes and does this next thing, enabling input. So the thing I want to enable input for is this object. So the target is self, and the player controller, I need to get which controller we have. So let me just type in controller, and I have a get player controller node. It defaults us to player index 0, which is the first player, and it connects to that other node. So you'll notice the things on the left are inputs. So these are things that are coming into this node for the node to do its job. And then on the right are outputs. This thread of execution here, these lines connecting here to these pins, the triangle pins, are just what's going to happen next. So after this happens, after we enable the input, we could do more. We could have more things happen. And all of this is going to happen when play begins. So I don't have anything else I want to do when play begins, so I can just move right along. You can use right click in here to pan around, and you can zoom in and out with the mouse wheel. That's how it's normally navigated. You can select nodes with your left click, and you can break links by holding Alt and clicking on them. Let me just reconnect this. Alright, so now that we have responded to that begin play event by enabling input on this object, I'm going to create another node. This one's going to be a different event because we want to respond to a key being pressed. So let me say key, let's say space, and it gives me the list of things that have space in them, backspace, space bar. So let me choose space bar. And so this is a new event. See how it's red just like my other event? I want it when the space bar is pressed to change the velocity of this object. So that's the speed. So let's try set physics linear velocity. Alright, so it already knows that I want to refer to the cube object. That's the only physical object on this blueprint. So it connects that up to the target already. That's great. And then the new velocity, x, y, and z are all zeros, and I don't want that. I want one of these to be non-zero so that it actually moves. So let's do a z of 1,000. The z dimension in Unreal Engine is the vertical dimension, so this should make it move upward. Okay, so that's hooked up. Let's compile it and save it. Alright, so once we've set that up, we need to make one little adjustment to our object. Let me click over onto the cube component on the side here, and it fills up the details panel with information about this cube, this static mesh component. So these are the default settings for this object, and one setting I need to change is simulate physics. I want to turn that on, so that makes it actually move when you bump into it, and it makes gravity apply to this object. We're going to need that for our set physics linear velocity to actually apply this velocity and make our object move. So let's click on the compile button and save it so this is ready to be used in our scene. Okay. So now in my content browser, I can grab that blueprint object and drop it into my scene. It's a new object there, and then I can press play to test it out. Click in there so I have control of my character, and when I press space, there we go. It's working. You can also do this with the blueprint screen, this window open, and you can see sort of the flow of execution here. So when I start it up, you see some flow going from the begin play event, so that play event got triggered, and then when I press spacebar, you can see that same thing happening with the spacebar key event. So every time I press spacebar, it shows that this execution is flowing. And that gives you a hint that helps you kind of debug and figure out problems with your visual script here. The last thing I want to do is to change the velocity a little bit. Right now it's hard-coded to 1,000. Maybe a designer wants to come in and change it a little bit, and they don't want to have to go into my blueprint and change it here. I can promote this to a variable, and I can make it something that someone else could change easily. So if I right-click on it, there's a promote to variable option here, and this variable comes up connected to that pin as input, and it shows up in the side over here in the My Blueprint panel, and it gives me the option to change its name. So I'm going to change it to Jump Velocity. I'm also going to click on this icon on the right to open the eye. This is going to make it visible so that it can be seen outside of this blueprint and modified. And then over in the details panel for this variable, I'm going to add a tooltip. This is just information about how it should be used. The jump power. And I can leave everything else as it is. Alright, let's compile it and save it. And then when I select my object, in the default section here, there's now a jump velocity. So I could change this. Let's try 3,000. There it goes. Okay, cool. So there's your little intro to blueprints in Unreal Engine, and we'll see how to work and do much more with them in the future. See ya.